TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations.
Shalom ve'erev tov, good evening. Welcome to our daily TV7 Israel News Bulletin, broadcast from Jerusalem. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu argues that the conditions for the fall of the Ayatollah regime in Iran have been created. The Islamic Republic of Iran convinces U.S. Vice President JD Vance to capitulate on the Lebanese file. And U.S. President Donald Trump warns Iran over threats to reimpose a blockade on the Strait of Hormuz. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu argues that the conditions for the fall of the Ayatollah regime in Iran have been created and that time will tell when the Iranian people will take their own destiny into their hands. Speaking at an annual JNS conference in Jerusalem, Prime Minister Netanyahu further highlighted that Israel's military offensive, in very close cooperation with the United States, effectively thwarted the Ayatollah regime's pathway to achieving nuclear weapon capabilities within the foreseeable future.
And had we not acted in Operation Rising Line and then in Operation Roaring Line, Iran would have had atomic bombs, and let me tell you something, they would have used them. That's what we prevented. Together with our American friends, the American Air Force, the American military, we carried out the largest airstrike in our history. We destroyed Iran's nuclear infrastructure. We knocked out 20 of their top nuclear scientists, 12 in Rising Line, another 8 in Roaring Line. And when you take out the scientists, it's very hard to make a nuclear weapon. Exceedingly hard. We decapitated the leadership of the terror regime. We shattered their missile industry. We knocked out their Navy. We knocked out their Air Force. We attacked their military industries. We attacked their bridges. We attacked so many targets that the cumulative damage that we did to the IRGC economy is not counted in the millions. It's not counted in the hundreds of millions. It's not counted in the billions. It's counted in hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. And it will take them a long time to recover. A long time. And they may not recover. Because once you deal these blows and once the rift between the regime and the people is so deep, you cannot tell when such a regime will fall. And I think we created the conditions for its future fall. That is what will be the real triumph, when the Iranian people take their own destiny in their hands and they knock out this brutal regime that is terrorizing them and terrorizing the rest of the world.
With regard to the latest efforts by Iran to incorporate the conflict between Israel and their Lebanese proxy Hezbollah into their own negotiations with the United States, Prime Minister Netanyahu stressed that the United States and Israel are sovereign countries that respect each other's independence.
You know, in the United States, they say that President Trump does everything that I ask him to do. And in Israel, they say that I do everything he wants me to do. Well, neither is true. We're leaders of independent and proud countries. We stand for our interests. I stand for the interests of Israel and for its security. And often we see eye to eye, sometimes we don't, but we respect each other's sovereignty and leadership and commitment to our people.
It is important to highlight that the U.S.-Iranian negotiations in Switzerland got off to a bumpy start, with the Iranian delegation threatening to leave the negotiations unless the United States effectively capitulates to Tehran's core demands, with chief focus as a first step on forcing Israel out of Lebanon.
Regarding Article 1, which was the most important subject of today's discussions, both in the bilateral and multilateral meetings, and now while the main session is underway, the issue of Lebanon received more emphasis than anything else. Naturally, if with regard to Lebanon, which is one of the principal fronts where the end of the war must be declared, this does not happen, then the subsequent issues will certainly not be negotiated. This was the emphasis of the Iranian delegation and personally of the head of the delegation, Dr. Galibaf. Fortunately, through the follow-up efforts that have been undertaken, God willing, we will witness the result of those efforts at the conclusion of today's meeting discussions.
It is important to know that while the Iranian delegation was negotiating in Switzerland, tensions escalated over remarks made by Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian, who openly proclaimed that the Ayatollah regime would not give up their nuclear enrichment program, boastfully asserting that the Trump administration would also capitulate on the nuclear issue.
We will not give up our right to enrichment, and they, too, will be forced to accept it. You all know what the so-called President of the United States was saying. He had made a complete 180-degree turn. He was saying that Iran must surrender unconditionally. Iran has no right to do this. It has no right to do that. Then he gave a speech and said that Iran has the right to do this. It has the right to possess this. In other words, he has reversed himself by 180 degrees compared to his previous positions and has accepted that they cannot ignore our rights.
The Iranian president's remarks coincided with threats by other Iranian officials that unless the United States forces Israel to halt its attacks against Hezbollah in Lebanon, the RGC would effectively block the Strait of Hormuz. President Trump responded by reciprocating threats of his own, warning that if Iran closes the strait, they would no longer have a country, and that if Iran fails to make a deal, the United States could effectively take over the Strait of Hormuz. Separately, President Trump also responded to the ongoing allegations voiced by the Ayatollah regime against Israel, which is defensively maneuvering in Lebanon against Hezbollah, asserting that Iran was the one responsible for the hostilities in Lebanon. He wrote, quote, "Iran must immediately stop their highly paid proxies in Lebanon from causing trouble. If they don't, we'll hit Iran very hard again, just like we did last week, only harder." Consequently, the Iranian delegation blatantly left the negotiating table in Switzerland, refusing to take a joint photo op at the end of the first session.
This is a historic meeting. Never before, outside of Islamabad and here, so outside the last few months, never before has the Iranian and American leadership met at such a high level. What the President has asked us to do is turn over a new leaf, to transform our relationship with the people of Iran and to extend an outstretched hand that says to the people of Iran that if your leadership is willing to give up being a driver of regional instability, if they are willing to give up nuclear weapons ambitions for the long term, then the United States is willing to fundamentally transform our relationship with that country. That is certainly our goal. We've already made great progress over just the last few hours, and I expect that we'll make additional progress in the hours to come. Well, first of all, we've seen great progress over the last just couple of days in ensuring that the ceasefire holds in Lebanon. These things are always a little bit messy. If you go back to how much was happening 3 months ago and compare it to 3 weeks ago, great progress has been made. If you go back to 3 weeks ago to 3 days ago, additional progress has been made. The President has committed us to see a full regional ceasefire. We found great partners in working with the Qataris, the Pakistanis, our friends in Israel. We're all working towards regional peace. There, of course, are going to be sometimes disagreements about precisely how to get there, but I actually feel great about where we are in Lebanon. There's still some additional wood to chop, but we're going to keep on working at it.
Progress was indeed made in the subsequent meetings with the American and Iranian delegations in Switzerland, ending their first round of talks with a decision to create a deconfliction cell to end the fighting in Lebanon. Interestingly enough, a joint statement announcing the creation of the deconfliction cell, which was facilitated by Qatar, Pakistan, Iran, and the United States, effectively reneged on Lebanon's own sovereignty and Israel's national security, since the mechanism did not even mention the State of Israel. Moreover, while the Lebanese and Israeli governments were scheduled to meet tomorrow in Washington for yet another round of discussions. U.S. Vice President JD Vance called Lebanese President Joseph Aoun early this morning, during the course of which he informed the Lebanese head of state of the negotiations' outcome. Consequently, in a message relayed to the American Vice President, Christian Forces Chairman Samir Jaja, who heads the largest parliamentary bloc in Lebanon, wrote, quote, "We believe that the greatest contribution the United States of America can offer Lebanon at this delicate stage lies in supporting the Lebanese state and its legitimate institutions as the sole national reference, confining any negotiation or approach to the Lebanese file to the Lebanese state alone, and permanently removing Iran from the Lebanese file in a way that helps the Lebanese definitively reclaim their national decision-making and prevents any continuation of foreign interventions in their internal affairs." Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. I would like to seize this opportunity to highlight my personal appreciation for TV7 family. Your unceasing support, to include monthly contributions and prayers, allows us to continue producing our variety of TV7 Israel productions from here in Jerusalem. Please keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem and redemption of Israel. I'm Jonathan Hassan, wishing you a Shavua Mevorach, and God willing, until our next update, Shalom from Jerusalem.